So as we get to crunch time in the football and the rugby, we're talking psychology today, a massive part of all sports, of course, as Steven Sylvester is here, former first-class cricketer, now a psychologist and author, and a familiar face, the former England Grand Slam winner, Jeff Probyn. Very good morning to both of you. And Steve, I must start with you because psychology, if you could bottle this, it is just so enormous, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's the winning edge. If you know exactly what you're thinking and you can get all your team thinking the same thinking, a shared mindset, then you can do really well.
What is it that makes a person tick on the sporting field? You've looked into this, you've worked with sportsmen and all the rest of it. I've always thought 50% physical ability, 50% mental and some.
Yeah, I think it's three things. Number one, it's a deep-seated hunger to do well. So how hungry are you to go the extra mile and break through one wall, then break through another wall? The second thing is, how bright are you? Are you bright enough to make sure you can make the right decisions at the right time under enormous stress? And the third thing is, can you work as a team or are you selfish? And those three things are the critical elements of high performance.
Jeff Probyn, Grand Slam winner from how many years ago? 1991, 1992. I want to take you back, Jeff, to 1990. England had gone 10 years. Had gone 10 years without winning the Grand Slam. About the same time England have now, 13 years today it will be, if they can break that. They messed up in 1990 against Scotland.
Yeah, we did.
What Steven said there, does that apply to you? You recognise the sights of that?
I recognise the aspect of the hunger for the simple reason that we did, certainly in the training before we got to the test, it was pretty relaxed. It wasn't as intense as perhaps it should have been, and I think there were a lot of players who thought we'd already won it. I mean, we had gone through that championship very successfully, beating everyone by a cricket score, and then we came up to Scotland and faced a team that were determined to really stop us, and
they won the Grand Slam instead. But you went on the following 2 years to win
we did,
in 91 and 92.
No one ever talks about the 92 one because we won every game by about 20 points. So, you know, it's always seen as something.
So we can kind of apply it. I mean, it's been a 13-year gap to what we think might be a Grand Slam for England today. Eddie Jones, we're going to hear from him in a second. Potentially a master psychologist. One of the papers today, The Secrets Behind Jones's 7-week England revolution. There's a quote here from one of the directors of rugby around the country saying, England looked in the World Cup as if they were all about being worried about what there was to lose rather than what there was to win. That was 5 months ago, 6 months ago. All of a sudden, it's changed. What has changed?
Yeah, I think the expectation. I think Eddie's brought in a different culture, a culture of relax, you're good players, you're competent, you're highly skilled, go out and have some fun. So there's a change in the way his leadership style has impacted the players.
I think that's slightly unfair, though, a little bit. I have to be honest. I think that, you know, Stuart Lancaster was brought in at a time when England were in disarray, and particularly in terms of the national team, in terms of how the national team was perceived, not only by its fans, but by people outside the sport. And he was brought in to do something different, to actually restructure England and make it the great team that it could be. And I think he played under very strict rules and regulations. What Eddie's done is he's relaxed, and so he's let the players relax as well. And I think that's just moved it on.
Well, but you can see in terms of the media, if we were to put up two images of Lancaster versus Eddie, there's a totally different relationship and rhythm with the media. Eddie knows how to work the media, reduce the pressure and expectation on the players, and Lancaster was always on edge, that sort of
tight fear. The fear seems to have just gone a little bit. It's a human nature thing, isn't it? A great book Steve has written here called Detox Your Ego, which applies to psychology in the workplace, on the sports field. There's a chapter here about sport, and you've written here about a football case here. Somebody recognising the need to serve others more by having fun. The words you just used a couple of minutes ago, Jeff. Is that what's happening with this England team, do you think?
Yeah, you can look at it. I mean, like I say, you can only go on data. And when you look at the England rugby team playing now versus playing in the World Cup, there is a difference. Handling's different. There's a flow, there's a rhythm, there's an ease at which they're doing, and that comes from the leadership. And that leadership then is the heartbeat. It runs through the team like a virus, and everyone thinks, do you know what? I actually feel it feels lighter, it feels freer, and I feel so. The same player has a completely different performance.
And also that confidence, though, that confidence that comes from winning. You know, if you're playing in a team, I was lucky enough to play in a team that won the majority of its games, and so you went onto a field with an expectation of being able to play your game, a relaxed attitude, slightly aware of what you were doing as a team. For argument's sake, if I was playing France now, I played against France 7 times. We won 6.
Yeah.
Good on you, Jeff. And also, listen, a sense of togetherness.
The first one we lost.
Eddie Jones, he's had a week where he's been fending off a bit of criticism from various departments, but this is what he had to say after the win against Wales, and a nice bit of psychology, I thought. Here he is.
I think everyone's keen for England not to win the Grand Slam, so let's be real about it. So Wales will be happy if we don't win the Grand Slam, and they're happy to do anything to upset us in the preparation for the Grand Slam. So it's as simple as that.
Do you honestly think that's the case?
Of course it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So what he's
trick
doing,
or not?
Yeah, well, he's deflecting as well. So what you've got is in this situation is someone who's desperate after 7 weeks in post to have an impact. So he wants his team to be playing well and to be focused on the right things. So he becomes the, if you like, the sponge to soak up and deflect anything away from the team, so he can keep his team in the right midst of what they're meant to do, which is to perform well on the field.
Yeah, focus.
Yeah,
and be focused.
Yeah.
Once they've won that game against Wales, in all probability they were going to win the Six Nations Championship. That was the stated goal at the start. No one dreamed of Grand Slams, and suddenly the Grand Slam's on the horizon. Yeah. And not only on the horizon, literally just over the edge of the table.
Yeah, and
what he's got to do is he's got to change the focus for the team.
Yeah.
And I think he did it very well.
Yeah. Briefly, you had a sports psychologist in '91?
In 1991, the first time we got a sports psychologist, it came to the World Cup, came to us, we were staying in a hotel in the middle of Hampshire, and he spent an entire week going around all the team, talking to all the players, seeing how they prepared, how do you prepare for a game, when do you start thinking about your opposite number, all this sort of stuff. At the end of the week, he got us all together in a room and he said, I can help you goal kickers. For the rest of you, you've made international level rugby. I can't help you. You've already got the right mindset. You've already...
Did it work for you then?
It worked for us in the sense that, I mean, you could argue that it was actually some of the best sports psychology that was ever used, because what he did is he said, you're already good enough.
Yeah.
And so, in that sense, he put out a very positive message.
Okay, we're going to come back to the rugby because big day for England. Sports psychology, and half the nation, most of the nation are wondering about Leicester City. It's an incredible story. As I'm sure Jeff, as a rugby man, everyone's sort of hoping that they can cross the line. I was watching the game against Newcastle the other night, and I did wonder at times whether they were playing the occasion of the season rather than the game. It tightened up a little bit in the second half there. What have you made of what you've seen in recent weeks? Can they get there, do you think?
I think they can get there, because I think Ranieri's producing something quite special, which is a group of players that have a point to prove that winning in your sport isn't just about money, fame, recognition, success, and all the bells and whistles. What he's done is he's kept expectation out of the way. Let's be together. We've got a group of players who, a lot of them have been rejected by other clubs, so they have a point to prove. They're not as valuable in the market as, say, some of the bigger players in the bigger teams. So here we've got this sort of almost, rags to riches story where these youngsters can come up as a group and do something special. And with Ranieri's mastery of being able to handle the media, handle his fans, handle his top players, and keep everyone buoyant.
Yeah. He's done a great job at keeping the pressure off, hasn't he, so far? Let us hear him, I think it was yesterday, talking about, people, the media are bound to ask, are you going to blow this, because we want to know. But this is what he said. Here's Ranieri.
Winning the title, I mean...
Come on, you are my friend, and now you want to...
No, listen, I know what you've been saying throughout the year, but it's getting closer and closer now, isn't it?
Seriously. Everybody are pushing us, and everybody could be happy, if Leicester achieved the title. But honestly, if at our side there were Manchester United or Manchester City or Chelsea, another big team, 5 points are good, are enough maybe. But Leicester, we don't know what happened next season, next match.
There you go. So he's saying, you know, we expect to lose every week. Of course he doesn't.
Perfect. He should have an attitude of no hope of winning, which is almost like, guys, just go out there. I need to protect you from the thought and the process of winning. And guess what, guys? Don't worry about it. This is just bonus. Actually, to survive in the league is a bonus. We're here next year. So it's whether the players can stick to his philosophy of togetherness, or will they slip into selfishness and be individuals?
Yeah. It is human nature, though, isn't it? I mean, it's enormous pressure. I mean, they cannot help. The closer they get, the more they're going to think about it.
The more they're going to think of themselves. And when you think of yourself, you stop thinking of the team and you stop playing. And that's what you're saying.
Did you see signs of that the other night?
Yeah, second half, because the enormity of what they're about to achieve, crossing the line is a very different psychology, and it requires you to not be free of yourself. And this is what I found with my research with Detox Your Ego, is that a world champion is able, at the moment of crossing the line, to not think of themselves. When the occasion actually asks you to think of yourself, you're actually letting go of self and thinking of the team. Now, if every player on the park can think of the team, they will win the league. If the players start to think about the occasion and what they can achieve personally, they will start to close down and be slower to the ball, winning balls and so on.
That's going to be,
Relax,
I mean, that's going to be a major thing for Leicester, because you know, if they do achieve the unbelievable and win it, that team will be decimated with other clubs coming in, buying people.
Well, that's for another day, though, isn't it? Do you know what? We're going to show you something from 1963. Leicester City, long before the Premier League years, they were at the top of the table with a few games to go, and they fell apart. Basically, they won one of their last 8 games and finished the season in fourth. I guess, you know, that's the same rules apply, don't they? But you know, they've somehow got to keep it together here.
Three things really. Number one, can Ranieri protect the players from themselves and being selfish? Number two, can the team keep the drive of togetherness going, and that will translate into consistent performance.
And you know, they're going to have a bit of luck as well. That's always a crucial element in any game. The ball to bounce the right way. You have that moment when you can score to actually do score. You know,
well, they're 5 points clear at the top, and let's just show you what's happening today, because it's become a soap opera, hasn't it? We're all gripped by this, really. Can this team with the 5,000 to 1 outsiders at the start of the season? Some of the people who've bet money on them have decided to cash out. Some have stayed in. That's another.
Stay in is my tip.
But anyway, they're playing away at Crystal Palace this afternoon. 8 games to go. 5 points clear of Spurs, who play Bournemouth tomorrow. At lunchtime, we've got Arsenal going to Everton as well. I just want to ask you, Stephen, as well, because I know you've got some thoughts about Arsene Wenger too. He's had a terrible week, you know. And listen, the guy is the loveliest man and a great communicator. Never shied away from a question. Done a lot with Arsenal. They need to win today. It's an outside chance for the titles now. What is happening with him? Can you tell us?
Well, I mean, first let's start by saying what a great manager, and he can't be criticised in my view, right? So this is a great manager who's climbed every mountain there is to climb and has achieved high things for his team. But I think when you set a bar of looking at players that are highly technical, but maybe they don't come with the same level of pace and power like his previous teams, then when it really gets tough, that physicality can have a bearing. And I think that's what happens. And I think when you're highly technical as a player, you might not be as strong on the communication, on the leadership. So you need a balance between technical finesse on the one hand, and the ability to lead and grab your teammate and pull them along.
Do you think it's right for Arsenal he should stay next season? Because it's a massive question, this, at the moment, and everyone's asking it.
Yeah, it is a big question. I think that's for Arsenal to decide. But my view is, I think.
That's a cop-out.
Well, you know, this is the media sort of merry-go-round and calling for managers to be sacked, and you know they haven't quite done what he's done, and he's not really doing the very best.
I always disagree with this aspect of sacking. Obviously, whether it's a manager in football or rugby or whatever, it's sacking them. But there is an element that says that people have a life. And they have a lifetime that you can do, which could be 8 to 10 years, and then after that, you need a new voice. You need some new ideas. You need to shake up.
Yeah, it's hard to let go of something you know and love, isn't it?
The key thing is, it's a bit like in business. I work with a lot of business leaders. You're getting to a point where you've plateaued or you're declining. You need advanced growth. In order to get the advanced growth, he needs people around him to tell him, come on, let's get our recruitment back. Let's spend the money on the right sort of individuals who have got the pace, the power, you know,
That's what Arsenal fans would love to hear, I think, for next season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, listen, we could talk all day on this. We're going to talk more rugby, particularly with Jeff Grand Slam potentially for England today in France. And also on the way, if you missed it this morning, back to business for Lewis Hamilton, but no, not everything going to plan. A lot of criticism about the new qualifying rules at the Australian. Saturday Sport, we're talking Grand Slams and rugby with our guests this morning, and psychology as well. But let's just take you to Australia. World champion Lewis Hamilton on pole for the first race of the new season in the morning in Melbourne. He was over 0.3 of a second quicker than his teammate Nico Rosberg. The 50th pole of Hamilton's career, and get this, only two men, Senna and Schumacher, have achieved more than that, so he's in great company now, Lewis Hamilton. However, story of the day, really, the new qualifying system facing an immediate revision. The final session failed to deliver the promised shake-up. A lot of criticism. The track was empty for the final 5 minutes. No one knew what was going on, really, and it didn't go down too well at all with the critics. So not an ideal start to the new season. Craig Slater has more from Melbourne.
Thank you very much and welcome back to Melbourne. Well, I don't know what anyone's complaining about. We got probably the result we would have got anyway in qualifying, and we all had 5 minutes at the end to go and make a cup of tea or have a biscuit or whatever. It was deflating, of course it was. Clearly the sport has got it wrong here. Do you think that's a unanimous view, and do you think that the powers that be will change things in time for Bahrain?
Well, we always sort of are sort of taught not to act too hastily and not to react too strongly, but I have to say the reaction from this qualifying session and the way it turned out was that it's got to change and it's got to go back to what it used to be until they can think of something much more fluid than what we got.
But if I can be devil's advocate, it did produce the result surely that we would have had anyway. It did mess things around a little bit in Q1. We had Daniel Kvyat eliminated at that point. So what's the chief failing here?
Well, I think it's just the thought process didn't seem to be really applied to it before we got here to Melbourne, because I think we'd even discussed before, and there were those chances where there was going to be an end of a session, like we saw at the end, where there was no one on track. But we'd already spoken about that, so I'm just so surprised that nobody thought that was going to be an issue, because of course it's going to be an issue. You know, I heard that there were people walking out the grandstands because it was basically over with 4 minutes to go. There were no cars on track anymore. So I think it's just there wasn't enough thought put into it, and because of that, that's why we've got ourselves in a position as well. But you have to remember the teams did vote this in.
Incredible, really, when you think about it. So it looks like they'll go back to what has been the format for the last few years. This has been a debate, so have you got any other ideas what the best way of doing this would be? There's been some suggestion, have a kind of Q4, so maybe the top three guys each get a single lap. Single lap qualifying at least allows the TV viewer to watch the car as it goes round. That was something we certainly couldn't do really under this format.
I think everyone in this paddock plays the game of what would I do if it was my toy, you know, how would I change things? I mean, originally there were two qualifying days. There was a Friday was the same as Saturday, and you could be on pole position, it could rain on Saturday, so Friday was an exciting day. We could go back to that, you know, and they had 4 sets of qualifying tyres, but they got rid of qualifying tyres because of the expense or, you know, the danger or something, and so it's constantly evolving. But actually I think the formula we had before last year was fine, actually, because it meant that nothing was really decided until the very last moments of qualifying. They all went out right at the very end, and the times were banging in one after the other, and it was quite exciting.
Last word from you, Johnny.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty much the same. I think what is important, and Damon's already mentioned that, I think we need to make Friday mean something. So if we actually put a qualifying session, a half an hour session at the end of the free practice, I think that would not be an issue, and it would just make, as I said, Friday important. Maybe you put them together when it comes on Saturday, but we can't carry on with this shenanigans.
Okay. Thanks, gentlemen. So it has rather overshadowed Lewis Hamilton's 50th career pole, which is a great achievement. It has to be said, Mr. Eccleston didn't want this either. It's like a kind of halfway house decision, this, which it seems on all the evidence has just gone wrong.
Thanks, Craig. We can just update that. Bernie Eccleston's agreed they're going to change this controversial qualifying session. They're going to look at it on Monday, and if all parties agree, we understand it's going to go back to what it was. So that was short-lived, wasn't it? Short-lived for England as they dream of the Grand Slam. Jeff Probyn, the Grand Slam winner twice, 91, 92. Tonight they're playing with Joe Marler, who's had a bit of a week. He's been no punishment for alleged words he had with one of his opposite Wales front row guys. Right thing is Joe Marler. He's not playing tonight. He's on the bench, Joe.
He's on the bench. He's dropped to the bench. I think that's probably a little warning from Eddie, just saying, you know, be a bit careful, be aware of your responsibilities. Joe would have been doing what everyone does in rugby and in cricket. You know, you get sledging in cricket. The unfortunate thing is he was standing close to the referee, and the referee's microphone picked it up. Is it right he said it? No, it's not.
But it's been defended as banter. I mean, psychologically, I mean, in terms of the message it sends out, people have said it's the wrong thing. But what do you think?
Well, I think we've got a paradigm shift going on in sport and in life. We can no longer just say what we think we can say. You know, we've got social media, we've got heightened activity. People are looking and scrutinising and picking things up. He has a moral and a cultural and an ethical obligation to say the right thing and do the right thing. And it's wrong to make these statements and to abuse in that way.
And finally, Jeff.
It's difficult. I know it's professional sport, and
because it's heat of the game. People say things. And you know.
But what we should be teaching our young players, though, what we should be sending the message out is that you can affect what you do, because if you're a great player, you're ambassadorial. You're going to be a custodian.
But the argument would be that, you know,
we're almost out of time. I've got to ask you, Jeff,
10
Grand Slam tonight. It's been 13 long years.
I think we can do it. I think France have got a very good team. They've changed their back row. They've brought in 2 new back row. They've gone for more power. They're starting with Trenduke, who makes them more threat in terms of their attack. But I think England have got the momentum.
Stephen, one more question to you. The whole nation is asking it. You know about the mind games. Is Leicester going to do it? They're playing today at Palace. 8 games to go. Can they do it?
Yeah, they can do it. Absolutely. I think Ranieri's brilliantly. I think his team is fantastic. So I think they can do it.
Lovely to see you.
Yeah, lovely to see you, Chris. Thank you.
Jeff, good to see you too.
Cheers.
Much more to come on a busy day of sport through the afternoon.
Thanks, Chris and the team.